All right, it's time to talk Carolina Panthers football once again with Rashad Beard, the one and only, the best Panther podcast on YouTube. Good to have you again, Rashad, especially, hopefully, too, the last time that we talk about the Carolina Panthers with the number one pick in the draft, right?
Yeah, that would be a great thing, right? We don't want to pick any
No.
number one anymore. So yeah, it's good stuff. I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad we created our own, controlled our own destiny right there, traded up to get Bryce Young. So
Yeah, and
good
it was a
stuff. Good
very
stuff.
it became a very tough call, which we don't see a lot in the NFL draft. Usually, you get to like the day before, maybe even the morning of, and we know the direction of the top pick, or at least we have a pretty good idea. I don't think anybody knew. I think it was 50-50. Maybe it was leaning towards Bryce the last few days, and I think more and more people started thinking, yeah, okay. I know you in your final mock draft, you went with Bryce. I believe your co-host went the
Yeah,
opposite way. Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't. Dave flip flops all the time, so I don't know what Dave
Okay.
was saying. But yeah, I settled in on Bryce for a while, at least a couple weeks afterward. We made the switch as a podcast. It was weeks, weeks before, a couple weeks before the draft. You see the writing on the wall, and I think the Panthers, I think they handled it the right way. They did their due diligence. They waited until they didn't even tell Bryce that he was the guy until the day of. So I like that they did that. I think it was a little more decisive than they were putting off. I think they knew for a little while, although I don't think they knew at the time of the trade. They did not know at the time of the trade, but we, as you went through the process, the pro days, you could see the differences, and I think that's when I settled in. Right after the pro days is when it started to hit me that yeah, they're probably going Bryce. You had Nicole Tepper there; she was not at CJ Stroud's. There was little subtle differences that you started to see, and then it's just you start to. And I'm on record. I was a CJ Stroud guy, but I cut on the film, saw some things with Bryce that he just wows me. I think the whole knock on his size is a little bit overstated. I think the kid is
Yep.
he has it all up here. I know they talk about S2 scores. I don't know anything about S2 scores, but Bryce, he has the ability to process, and he makes up everything he lacks in height. He makes it up with his IQ, and so I think he's a little bit more athletic than people think he is. I think he can move better than people think he can move. But just being able to do things and read the field and make the right reads, that's something that it's not. You can't find that. Just like you can't find a 6'5", 250-pound quarterback, you can't find somebody as smart as Bryce either. So I think there's some things that he makes up for
And the
in his lack of
fans, if
size.
they're not familiar, I know there are a lot of fans that don't follow college football. That's the thing that they're gonna really find exciting about having this kid at quarterback, of the things that he's going to be able to do, that they probably say, wow, I mean, not many quarterbacks can do that. I mean, yes, Patrick Mahomes can do that. Maybe another player or two over the last 10 or 15 years can do that, but he's that rare guy. But like you said, it's important based on his size. He has to be able to do some of the other things, including he adds that wow factor to be able to make plays out of nothing.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. The out of structure plays when the plays break down. And I really hate to do this. And you brought his name up, but I really hate comparing players, because we never compare a player to like an average player. We always go to the top. But you really see like Patrick Mahomes vibes when you cut on the film and see his escapability, the way he can tweak his arm angle
Yep.
to find those passing lanes, the way he's accurate at all levels. I mean, and just when the plays break down, he could just make something out of nothing. And from a Panthers perspective, we just have not seen that at quarterback since peak Cam Newton. Peak Cam was out there running around, and when the plays break down, he can go out there and run over a guy, or he can throw the ball 60 yards. Like, we have not seen that in a quarterback since Cam, and that's a long time. I mean, I'm not talking about
Sure, yeah.
Cam last year that was a shell of himself. I'm talking about peak Cam, like 2015 2017 Cam. We have not seen that since then. And so I'm excited. Like, again, this is coming from a CJ Stroud guy, a former CJ Stroud guy. I'm excited that we got Bryce Young, and I'm happy for him, and I cannot wait to see him. Mini camp starts, later this week, so I can't wait.
So you're going to be going there? Is it open?
Yeah, I mean, it's not open to the public, but I'll make my way out there to see what I can see.
So Young is the big name, of course. By the way, how is he? Have you been able to find out anything? Sound bites, interviews, things of that nature. One thing or another, as far as how he's been handling himself so far.
I mean, Bryce is Bryce. I mean, you turn on any interview, and I think that's what really got a lot of Panthers fans more comfortable with the pick, is that he went on this media tour. He went on, the Pivot. He went on Cut to It with Steve Smith. And all of these shows, he just started to peel back the onion. You start to know who this guy is. And, I mean, he handles himself so well as a professional. It's the complete polar opposite of what we had in Cam. I'm not saying Cam isn't professional, but what I'm saying is Cam was, he was a big voice. He was loud. He led different. With Bryce, he's going to be a different type of leader. And it's going to be interesting to watch. As if he starts to lose, how is he going to handle it? Is he going to change? Like, it's going to be interesting because he answers every question so well. It's almost like he's been groomed for this. I mean, he's got a Heisman winner. He's been groomed for this since day one, and he handles it as such. So it's really difficult to kind of get a read outside of the canned stuff. He's not really giving anything and
that'll be the case. I mean, he's not going to be that type of guy, and you want the guy to lead by example, especially on the football field, and that's exactly what Bryce Young is all about.
And just to, I want this to be clear. I'm not saying the way Cam Newton leads is a bad one. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's completely different. I want to be clear on it, because Cam fans and Panther fans would, they'll come at me. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying it's a stark difference from what we had in Cam Newton. That's all.
All right. So we can go on and on about Bryce Young, but he's the obvious story. It's easy to go down that road. We don't really need to do that. You guys, I'm sure, have talked up a storm about him, so I'm sure the Panther fans, and you're going to be continuing to do that, hopefully for a very long time. But what I want to find out more about are some of the other. First of all, I got to ask you about, now that the draft is over, and you know that Bryce Young is the quarterback, and we talked about the trade when it occurred. How do you feel, and how does most of the fan base, how have they come to kind of take in what the Panthers gave up and what they got?
Well, I think you have to look at the draft as a whole to kind of make that final assessment. Yeah. I mean, I know we're going to get to him, but when you look at being able to draft a guy like Jonathan Mingo after getting rid of DJ Moore, that matters, right? I'm not saying that Mingo is going to replace DJ Moore's production, because DJ Moore put up a lot of stats. I mean, he was a constant 1,000-yard receiver. I'm not saying Mingo is going to be that, but Mingo definitely has the capability to put up monster numbers. You look at the lineage with DK and AJ Brown coming out of Ole Miss. These guys are doing exceptionally well at the NFL level because, they played with some lackluster quarterback play in college. So, now they get into the NFL and their talents really start to show. So I think getting a guy like Jonathan Mingo really helps. Seeing what we did in the offseason free agency, bringing in Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, I think that made a lot of people kind of forget. And again, not necessarily forget, because DJ was a fan favorite, but it helps. It really helps kind of getting us to move along. So we had a great free agency. I mean, we did a good job, and I really like what they did in the draft. And I don't think many people can be upset. I think really at the end of the day, it's not going to really come to a fruition until we see it translate to W's. Once it translates to W's, nobody's going to care. But at this point, I'm cool with the way things landed.
Well, let's talk about Mingo. We can start with Mingo because of the fact that there was. I mean, he went pretty much where I think most people thought, second round. Now he went pretty high in the second round. I think that there were some people who thought and a couple other receivers could have gone ahead of him. But look, every GM, every team likes specific players for their system, and nobody's right or wrong until we see them, as you just said, on the field. But what did you think about, like, when looking back now, and that they add a receiver, and you've been able to take a look at some of the other receivers that were available? What did you think about picking up Mingo compared to who they could have picked up?
No, I like Mingo. I think they could have. I think the only other option would have been taking the edge rusher a little bit sooner and then trying to get Mingo maybe a little bit later. Or you could have got a guy like A.T. Perry, who I really like. There's some guys that went after him, like that I do like. But with that said, I do like what Mingo brings, and like I said, the comparison between DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown cannot be ignored. They're all freak athletes. In fact, Jonathan Mingo is faster, and he jumps higher than A.J. Brown. And we know what A.J. Brown is doing in the league right now. So I like what they did. I think they took a little bit of a risk going with Mingo. I think he went a little bit higher than what some would have imagined. I know you said second round, but I think some people may have had a third round grade on Mingo. Yeah. So I think it went a little bit higher, but again, I'm happy with it because at the end of the day, to me, it's about getting Bryce Young somebody he can grow with, right? Get Bryce Young targets.
Yes.
Although we did add some names to the wide receiver room. We added DJ Chark, Adam Thielen. We still have Terrace Marshall, right? But at the end of the day, those guys, Adam Thielen's 30 years old. He's getting up there, right? And then DJ Chark's only here for 1 year deal. But we absolutely have Jonathan Mingo now on his rookie contract, and both of those guys can grow together. So I like the fact that they got a wide receiver in the draft. I was a little thrown off because, David Tepper said that we were not going to draft or not going to invest any, money or what I took it as draft capital into the wide receiver position. But then obviously that was a little bit of a smokescreen, and they ended up drafting Mingo. But again, I like what Mingo brings to the game. A little bit, I would say, inexperienced, I guess, against press coverage as well. I would like to see him do a little bit more. I'm going to see how he adjusts to press coverage in the NFL. I have a little question about his route running ability. I think he was successful on running, outs and curls and slants, things going inside where he can use his body to shield off guys, but wasn't as successful when it comes to like post route, corner routes. So I'd like to see him expand the route tree a little bit more. But he has the speed. I think getting in that wide receiver room, having guys like around him, like Steve Smith Sr., who can help him out, I think he's going to do a great job. He's going to do a great job, and I can't wait to see him and grow.
The only other receivers that I think could have been taken ahead of him that you could really maybe debate on, and we will later on down the road, would have been the two Tennessee receivers. That's it. But I think it's real close, and that's why I don't think it's not like, oh my goodness, they took Mingo over. I think what you said was perfect, though. It wasn't necessarily the receiver. It was the fact that the one position, and we talked about this before the draft, that it looked like they were going to add, they were going to have to add, and they didn't add at all, was the edge rusher. And that's where I think that we can have the debate on was it receiver or edge rusher, not necessarily was Mingo picked over another receiver that we should be having this debate on.
Well, we added DJ Johnson, who for all intents and purposes, is outside linebacker, is going to be an edge rusher. He's not a pass rusher per se, but DJ Johnson does fit that role. I thought they would have flipped and maybe would have gone in the second round, but we could talk about him in a second. One thing I do want to talk about with Mingo, and I think this is why he's going to crack the three-man rotation when it comes to the wide receivers. I think that his ability to block and willingness to block is what's really going to get him out on the field. I think that's what's going to get him snaps. I think, when you talk about Frank Wright and what he did with the Colts, they ran three wide receiver combinations 75% of the time, which was a top 10 rate amongst all NFL teams last year. So I think he's going to be able to crack that rotation with his ability to block, because Frank Wright also likes to run the football. So you got to have guys that are ready, willing, and able to block. So I think Mingo is going to do that. I think what he was best at amongst all wide receivers was his ability to block, and I think that's why they took him.
Excellent analysis. So let's tell you what, talk about DJ Johnson. So he goes into third round. As soon as they made the pick, what did you think?
Well, I was not happy with this pick. No, I think the pick in itself was okay. I'm not necessarily mad at the individual itself. I was a little upset that we traded a fourth round pick to move up to get this guy that really nobody knew about. Or at least thought
that he could have gone in the sixth round. That's where our lads graded him. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I thought you could get him later in the fourth. However, the argument against that is that you've got Evero, you got Dom Capers. they know what
Sure.
they know what they're doing. I was about to curse, but they know what they're doing, right? And so if they identify a guy that fits what they want to do and they deem him uh, capable and he fits the skill sets of what they're looking for, then it's really hard to go against that. And I'll say this, we don't have a track record for Evero and Dom Capers. Like, we don't know what they're gonna do with the Carolina Panthers. So you have to kind of let it play out. As a Panthers fan, I know it's real easy for us to complain about this. He's 6'4", 260. He's a freak athlete. Does some good things. He's got some really rare traits, and I think that's why Evero and Capers wanted him. I think he's got real good power in his hands to set the edge. So he's a really good run blocker. A run edge setter, and he can defend the run. And I think he's got good closing speed to pursue guys. So if somebody happens to get around the edge, he has enough speed to chase them down. He takes good angles to do so. Again, one downside and one positive for him is that he's older, right? He's 24 years old. He's about the same age, or will be the same age as Brian Burns. So you talk about you're talking about a guy that needs to develop. And he's already 25 years old. That's what makes us upset about the pick, because he's not perfect. He still has to develop. But the positive side to that is that he has a mature body. Like, he's 25. He doesn't have to adjust to playing in the NFL. His body's already there. So maybe that adjustment period or development period won't be as bad. So that's one thing you could push back and say. Again, I just don't like the fact that we traded the 4th round pick. He's 25 years old, and Brian Burns he's about to turn 25, I believe, in October. Brian Burns just turned 25 in April. So there's some concerns about that. He doesn't have a lot of experience at the position. And with Oregon, he played tight end and he played outside linebacker for 2 years each, and only registered 9 sacks in those 2 years playing edge rush. So he has a lack of experience, but he's also old. So it's really weird.
Well,
I don't know.
Hey, you know what? The coaches,
we'll see.
As you know, they really like these raw prospects, because they, especially the ones like you said that are already fit the bill physically. But now it's a matter of, all right, this kid's raw, especially mentally, and we got to get him to play the way that we want to play here. And he doesn't have a lot of experience, so that's a good thing in our minds. Because it's the whole idea about molding them into it's understandable why a coach would fall in love with a kid like this, but this is the type of draft pick that has to work out. Yeah,
it's a 3rd round pick, man. And if it was me, and you talk about players that we could have taken a little bit later, I like a guy like Isaiah McGuire. He was a good edge prospect, and he's 3 years younger. And then you take a look at what was acquired with our picks, right? So you got Darnell Washington, who I know has injury issues. The Steelers used one of our picks to go get Darnell Washington, and they also grabbed Nick Herbig, who we brought in on a top 30 visit as well. So 2 guys that we technically could have had. Steelers used our picks to go get those guys, but we're gonna have to see. So it's wait and see mode. And I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna hold my thoughts until we see it.
Let's talk about the 4th round pick, because the offensive line definitely not an issue when you're taking a look at this team. We talked about that. So this to me looks like a best player available kind of draft pick, especially with the fact that, all right, you just drafted DJ Johnson. I would guess maybe there wasn't another edge rusher that they felt was available at this point in time. What did you think about the pick?
This pick I like, and I think we talked about reaching for a guy like DJ. This guy was a BPA pick, and I think it's a steal, right? So 6'3", 322 pounds. This guy played with Icky at NC State, right? So he has the chemistry. They both played on the left side. You have to look at the Panthers' current situation. You got Brady Christensen coming off injury, right? He's healthy. He's ahead of schedule when it comes to the return, and should be available. But also Austin Corbett, who's going to miss some time. He's going to miss a couple of weeks. So it's good that we got a guy like Zavala who is going to come in. I know Austin Corbett played right side, and Chandler is more of a left side guy. We have some depth there with Cade Mays, Deontay Brown. There's some guys there. And listen, I've never been able to confidently speak about the depth on the offensive line for the Carolina Panthers probably since, I don't know,
Uh-huh.
2008. So it's been a long time since I've been confident enough to talk about the offensive line. This is good. This is a really good pick. He's a mauler. He's a good run blocker. And I think this is, with Frank Reich wanting to run the football, I think it's going to be excellent for the offensive line. I'm curious to see how he makes that transition. But it's easy to see that when James Campen, our offensive line coach, gets excited about it, then we can't help but be excited about it.
Yeah,
so
because
I really like this pick.
as good as the offensive line 5 starters look when they're healthy, the fact is there wasn't, besides, depending on Cade May's development, the fact is there wasn't really that young player on the offensive line that you could look at and go, hey, if we have an injury on the offensive line, we've got this good young prospect that we can throw in there. Now the team does. So you can't have enough offensive linemen.
Yep. I think we agreed. And I think we have a couple of guys, that are ready to contribute. Like I said, Mays is really one of those guys. He played all over. He can play center, tackle, guard. He can play anywhere. It's one of those swing guys. And I really think he's going to take a really good jump if he has the opportunity to play. So I'm excited about him. I'm also really excited about Zavala, 2 young guards on top of the guys that we have in Brady Christensen, who I think could move back to swing tackle, depending, because he's a little bit smaller. Like, got the short arms. I was initially against that because I thought he played okay at guard. But, man, when you get a mauler like Zavala, who is much bigger, he's bigger. And he's a mauler. You get him in there, put him in at left guard alongside of Icky, and they have the chemistry. They know each other's language. That is important.
Yeah, that is.
That's something that's often not talked about when it comes to offensive linemen. Chemistry. Where's the guy going to be? Those guys know where they play. They have a lot of experience playing with each other. So I could see them moving Christensen out, and he can play swing. So we'll see. One quick thing. One quick stat. 615 pass block snaps. Zero sacks allowed at NC State. 1 QB hit. Amazing stats at NC State.
Excellent. So, but I love the college combo. That looks like potentially a nice relationship down the road, maybe as early as this season. All right. Also on defense, with the last pick, Jamie Robinson, safety. What did you think about adding another defensive back, and specifically Robinson?
This is another steal. I got to be honest with you. We put our ski mask on and grabbed 2 picks at the back end of this draft, and this is probably outside of Bryce, this is my favorite pick.
Okay.
This is my favorite pick of the draft. This guy has a ton of experience at Florida State. As a Florida State fan, probably a slight little bias because I watched this guy play a lot, but he played all over. I mean, he's got 1,348 total snaps over his college career. He played like 633 box snaps, 759 deep snaps. So the guy's played all over the field at FSU. And I'll add this, at Florida State, he was the first player to earn first-team all-conference honors in consecutive seasons since Jalen Ramsey. So Jalen Ramsey, I'm not saying he's Jalen Ramsey at all. I'm not saying that by any means. But what I'm saying is he's cut from that cloth. This guy's talented. He's really talented, okay? He started all 13 games in 2022, team-high 99 tackles all over the field. He's a hard-hitting safety, extremely high ceiling. A sure tackler, only missed 7.3% of his tackles that he attempted across 4 seasons. This guy is that good. You put him in a box, you play him all over, and he is absolutely a dog. I love this guy. I love him.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that I think a lot of times we do get into this thing, especially during the draft. We get into this thing of, oh man, they reached for DJ Johnson, and then a day later, it's, wow, look at it. We get this guy that could have gone in the 2nd round, and we got him in the 5th round. Instead of just like, you know what, the draft is over. Let's just take a look at the players we got. And I think if the fans, or if you looked at the players, you would have said, oh, we must have got Robinson in the 3rd round and DJ Johnson in the 5th round. And everybody would have been, okay, hey, we traded up for Robinson. Right. Hey, we got an edge rusher a little bit. But because it didn't work out that way, it's debated differently. But the fact is, the players are the players, and that's really all that counts. So,
yeah, it's a great point, because if you flip Zavala and DJ Johnson, or Jamie Robinson and DJ Johnson, it's a whole different conversation. The only caveat though is that we traded up and we lost a 4th round pick. So that's the only thing you can't take away from the equation. But it's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, Jamie Robinson, man, I love this pick. I really do. And I think a lot of Panthers fans, and I brought this up a couple of times, but a lot of Panthers fans have a little bit of PTSD when we passed on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from a couple of years ago. We didn't get him I think he went in the 4th round. And I think this pick right here is going to make up for that. That's how good I think this kid is going to be. I'm really excited about him.
Now, I tell you what, since we're talking about defensive backs, let's stick here because this had to be, and by the way, just so everybody knows, I am reading off of my notes from the Our Lads Draft Guide. So, and I know you did a great job of promoting it.
I have a couple of them.
You've got your hard copies, and I know you did a great job of giving those PDFs away. So, but let's take a look at another defensive back because Rajon Wright, ourlads.com has the cornerback from Oregon State rated as high as a 4th round draft pick, and Carolina was able to sign him right after the draft. So, as we're talking DBs, we should talk about Rajon Wright.
Oh, I love this one. And I said this, big shout out to Steve Smith Sr. I went on Cut To It to talk about the draft prospects. Really good episode. Please check it out when you get a chance. But Rajon Wright, man, this kid, 6'2", 193 pounds. We got some cornerbacks on our roster that are in trouble. We got some guys, we talked about on several occasions. We talked about C.J. Henderson and guys like Dante Jackson who injury concerns or just aren't playing very well. This guy, Rajon Wright, he has a different type of dog in him. That's a recurring theme. Look at the guys that we're bringing in our secondary. They have dog. They have fight. And you look at the system that Evero puts out. Look at how good his secondary was in Denver, right? Look at what he's put together out there. That same thing is happening right here in Carolina. This guy, excellent size and length. He can close space with the defenders really well. Really good in press. He can punch well. He's comfortable in zone. Shows he can turn and locate the football because he uses length to his advantage. Very fluid. He's not going to be the fastest guy in the world, right? It's some bigger guys, some faster guys get over top of him, kind of stack him a little bit. But, man, I really – to get him as an undrafted free agent, you want to talk about another ski mask situation here? That's what we just did. Yeah, we definitely stole Rajon Wright. And I also bring up Mark Milton, another 6'2", 181-pound cornerback that we also stole. So, again, we got some cornerbacks on our roster that are in trouble for sure.
Yeah, and and every year you're going to add at least one undrafted rookie free agent to the roster, and who knows, maybe a couple. And that's what you want. You want these kids to not, especially the day and age with the salary cap. Anytime you can get these cheap kids on the roster, all the better. Because the only defensive back that they added late in the process was Eric Rowe. And Eric Rowe is a nice contributor. But other than that, there just wasn't anything else besides what the team added during the draft. So,
yeah, well, we added Von Bell as well. So Von Bell,
early in free agency.
Yep, early. Yep, and then we picked up Rowe. So there's some depth there. I like what we're doing in the secondary. That was a really big, especially from a safety standpoint. Our secondary was not very good. I know we like to hype them up from Panther standpoint, but the reality is they weren't very good. With J.C. Horn is available, monster. Outside of him, we can't get Dante Jackson to stay on the field. He's always banged up. And it is what it is. I mean, I'm just calling spade a spade. When he's available, he's really good. But when he's not available, there's nothing we can really do about it. And I think bringing in these guys, man, Rajon Wright, Mark Milton, there's going to be those guys will really make a push, especially when you look at guys like Keith Taylor, who listen, I'm not the best evaluator, apparently, when it comes to cornerbacks, because I really like C.J. Henderson and I really like Keith Taylor. But both of those guys, they better watch out. They better watch out because I think these two young guys are really going to push them in training camp. They really are.
And still, it's way too early to tell exactly what they're going to do with Jeremy Chin, but that's going to be a big story during camp to find out exactly how Evero uses Chin. We talked a lot about that, and I'm sure that's going to be a big topic for you guys this training camp.
Huge. Everyone's saying it's going to be closer to the line of scrimmage, box safety, but we'll see. It's going to be really curious to see how everything lines up. I won't know until training camp. Nobody's going to know until training camp outside of the defensive coaches and staff. So we'll see.
All right, another player the team added on defense after the draft was Jalen Redmond, defensive lineman. Our lads had Redmond going as high as the 6th round. So have you heard anything about Redmond? What do you think about that signing?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Redmond. I know he's a tackle from Oklahoma, but I don't have a ton of research on him. I will say this: I think he has a great opportunity simply because the guys that we signed on our interior defensive line are 1 to 2 year deals outside of Derrick Brown, like Shy Tuttle, 1 year, Deshaun Williams, 1 year deal. So we do need a guy to step up long term. Yep. So he has a unique opportunity here to make a push, but I got to be honest, I haven't done a ton of research on.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When I was going over, we talked about it, and I posted it in the draft guide on what Carolina needed. The 2 spots that were right at the top after quarterback were defensive line and edge rusher, and that's why the DJ Johnson pick, of course, is so big. Also, by the way, the 3rd was defensive backfield. So everything was on defense. But yeah, Jalen Redmond, unlike DJ Johnson, I mean, there was no draft capital that was added on the defensive line. But you can't do everything in one offseason. So my question then is, what's left? Like next offseason, from this year to next year, what does Carolina have to do to complete this roster to compete with the best teams?
Man, it's interesting because, I mean, we have players everywhere, and it's just a matter of who's going to play and who's going to excel in their position. Like, we have this new scheme, so it's really difficult to see where the gaps are because we haven't seen the scheme enacted yet.
Good point.
We haven't seen everybody, how they're going to perform. But if I were to take a stab at it, I'm going to say we still need to improve the outside line. We need another edge rusher outside of Brian Burns, opposite of Brian Burns. We're about to invest a lot of money in him, so we need to get we need somebody to step up over there. Somebody has to step up. I like Luvu, but I think he's going to slide inside, and I think it's going to be an opportunity for Marquise Haynes to kind of ball out. But somebody has to step up. I would say also that the defensive lineman that we just talked about, all these guys are on 1 year deals, so we got to find some long-term solutions on the defensive line, on the 3 guys up front. Outside of that, I think cornerback somebody's gonna show up this year. I think, between those undrafted guys, I think somebody's gonna show up. Safeties appear to be okay. Offensively, it's gonna be tough. Some of those wide receivers got to step up, and so if some of those wide receivers step up, that relieves a gap we have to fill. The defensive backfield is interesting. Miles Sanders, who I like, we got to see how it plays out. Offensive line appears to be okay. Tight end appears to be okay. So we'll see. To me, it's all about the coaching and how everything is coached. And we'll see where the gaps are.
And, of course, the division, this is definitely the division there for the taking. Every one of those teams is saying that to themselves, that, hey, we can win this division. But it's not just about winning the division, of course. It's especially where the Carolina is right now. It's still a rebuilding process, but it's not a long rebuilding process. And Bryce Young, if he's as good as advertised, then it shouldn't take long as the team does a really good job of surrounding him and also adding a few more players on defense. Because I think if I did the 2024 draft already for Carolina, I might be doing the same profile. I might be saying edge rusher, defensive line, defensive backfield. And that's okay. But I think by next year, best case scenario, I think next year would be the offseason that you can, if everything goes well with Bryce Young's development, that Carolina fans can start thinking much bigger things.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, we have a lot of cap space going in
even
next
better
year too. So that's the thing about drafting a Bryce Young. You free up so much cap space to use on
other positions.
A linebacker. One thing I didn't bring up was linebacker, an interior linebacker. We probably need another interior linebacker. Shaq Thompson is aging. I like Frankie Louvu, but I don't know.
Well, it's up to Brandon Smith, isn't it?
Move him inside, outside. And Brandon Smith too, yeah. So it just depends. It really depends. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know where these guys are going to line up. So it's all about I have no idea. I have no clue.
Are you going to lose anybody? I know you're going to get cap space open, but you're still not going to pay anybody just to pay them if they want more money that you believe that they're their worth. Is there a player that you might be concerned about losing next offseason?
Not really. I think Derek Brown, we just took his fifth-year option, so he would be the biggest person that I would be concerned about losing. Let me see.
So next
pull this up
offseason
real
for
quick.
sure, you want to make sure you want to definitely give Derek Brown a new deal. That's one of the biggest, and Brian Burns.
For
Those
sure.
are the two guys that you have to lock up.
Yeah, Brian Burns should be getting paid this year. But when you look at the free agents next year, a guy I'd be concerned about is Frankie Louvu. I know he's going to play very well. Depending on what happens with DJ Chark, you might want to lock him up. He has yet to play a full
he needs a
season
home.
healthy.
He needs a home.
So
yeah,
he does. He's flip-flopping teams. If he plays well and if he's healthy, I can see us locking him up. I could see. Let me see. Yuto Gross-Matos, I don't see getting a deal. Laviska Shenault could be an interesting one. Jeremy Chin, that's the big one. The Jeremy Chin is the big one that we need to make a decision on. Where is he going to play? How much are we going to pay him? That's the biggest one. Outside of that, there's no other names on this list that I'm in dire need to re-sign. So there's not a lot of guys. And again, when you build a team like this, you have to not hit on these draft picks. You have to hit on the draft picks. So guys like DJ Johnson, they got to play well. Guys like Mingo, they have to ball out. Jamie Robinson, all these guys, they have to play and they have to play well. And we talk about this class being a developmental class. Last year's class was also a developmental class.
From last year,
we need some of these guys to start developing. We need them to start playing and showing that they're developing. Because if they don't, we're going to start spending more and more money in free agency, and that's just not a sustainable way to build a team. You have to hit on some of these
absolutely.
draft picks.
And one more player, by the way, that intrigued me, who they signed, and is a player that I think has a shot to make the roster. Probably not this year, maybe practice squad, but I'd keep an eye on, and that's Cam Peoples, the running back from App State. I really like, a bruiser, big guy. You need those guys on your roster. I think he's somebody that could eventually crack the roster. Now, in today's day and age, he's not going to offer anything in the passing game, that kind of deal. But it's having a guy like that you can maybe count on in case you need that extra yard or two, and maybe you want to wear down teams late in games. He could be a guy that could develop in the next couple of years.
Oh yeah, and I 1,000% agree with that. Cam Peoples is a 6'2", 220-pound running back. It's a different skill set or different size of running back that we don't have on the roster at this point. We don't have a guy of his size and stature on the roster, so he can easily, because guess what? You're not going to be on 4th and 1. You're not going to be QB sneaking Bryce Young. It's just not going to happen. So you need a big running back to go in there and get those tough, physical 4th and 1, 3rd and shorts, those type of plays. And I think he's got some work to do. Like you said, he's not going to offer anything in the pass game. His hands are bricks. But I think, and he also needs to lower his pad level a little bit. He's 6'2", runs a bit tall. So he's got some work to do, but I think he could absolutely crack the roster.
Yeah, good point on the size of the room, because that's going to be something, is those short yardage situations. It's not so easy when you don't have like that physical between the tackles rusher or that running back with size. So we'll find out how Carolina handles that this year, and find out whether also Peoples can develop down the road. How is the cap right now? Could they sign or add anyone else of significance before the season?
Yeah, I think we do have about $20 million in cap, about 26, but that does not include the rookie contracts. So I think what the plan, I don't think they're going to sign anybody else big. I could see them, if they get in a situation where they put these guys on the field and they don't like what they see from an edge rusher standpoint, I think they could go out there and take a look at it, kick the tires on a Yannick, or sign one of those big, because there's a lot of big name edge rushers still out there. Frank Clark, there's a lot of guys still out there that they can go get. I could see that being a possibility, but I don't think they want to do that. I think they're going to want to take this money that they have left over, save it for emergencies during the season, and then roll it over into next year. And then next year is where the big money kicks in for the Carolina Panthers. I think when it's all said and done, we're going to end up probably, with $50 million in cap space to spend next year. And so it's a really, really big number. And I think that's when we'll go on a spending spree and start to, because we'll be in that window at that point. Bryce coming in year 2, the window is going to start to open. Players are going to want to start to come to Carolina because Bryce is going to be so good. And I think that's going to be when you start to see us spend big. But I don't think we're going to spend any more in this offseason, personally.
So they just re-signed Irving, correct? All right.
Yes. I mean, Cam Irvin's a swing guy. I mean, he's good in that backup role, but I absolutely do not want to see him playing by any means necessary. I want to see him in a backup. He's good in the backup role, coming in jumbo packages and things like that. But we don't want to see him every down as a starter. I'll pass on that.
So what's on tap for the program, the podcast, between now and training camp?
Yeah, man, tune in. We got a lot going on. We're going to have more player interviews. Again, if you haven't seen it, you go check us out on Steve Smith Sr.'s Cut to It. That was an amazing episode for us. And appreciate Steve for allowing us to come on the show. Just every week, we go live every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. So check that out. And more content, more draft content, fantasy content. A lot of good things, man.
Looking forward to talking to you again, especially before training camp, Rashad. Thanks for doing this, and enjoy. You said you're going to camp. What is it, next week? Rookie camp?
Yeah. So mini camp, rookie mini camp starts later this
week. Okay.
I think it's Friday and Saturday, and so I'll be out there checking out some things, and then also we got a couple things coming up. And then the big training camp comes, and we're going to be out there for that. Enough. So it's going to be a fun summer.
Yes,
fun summer for Carolina.
I can imagine the new coaches in town, the new quarterbacks in town. There's not going to be a more exciting training camp for Carolina football that you've probably seen in a long time. So it's going to be real exciting. Can't wait to talk to you about it during the season. First things first, we'll talk at training camp. Rashad, appreciate your time as always, and best of luck at mini camp, and keep that podcast going.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime.
You got it. By the way, check out the description area in this video. That has a link directly to Rashad's channel. So we'll talk to Rashad again sometime soon. Check out the rlads.com website to order one of these rlads draft guides as well. And we'll catch you next time here on the Rlads Football Network.